All right.
Swipes up.
I call this September 1st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to order. Thank you for joining us, those in the audience. We always appreciate when we have an audience. There are times when there is nobody other than the applicants. And this is a public meeting, and we like to have the public in the room to provide input. We have two items on the agenda tonight. I was just notified that there was an applicant that had sent a letter for Wheels Overlook and indicated that that application will come to the Planning Commission on September 1st. It does not. So if you're here for that, it's not going to be before the Planning Commission tonight. The two items we have, well, there is one that has been deferred. Mead Broadwell Residential has been deferred by the applicant, and it will be held on October the 6th. Before we consider the two items, I'd like to ask the board what you'd like to do about the minutes from the last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of August 4th, 2022.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Or in favor? Motion carries. The first item on the agenda is Z-22-13/V-22-25 Grand Communities 2325 Old Milton Parkway, and I assume that Michael will be presenting.
Can you hear me now? Yes. There we go.
Much better.
The light was on, but it just wasn't working. Sorry about that. The first item before you, the applicant is Grand Communities, LLC. They're requesting a rezoning and variances to allow for 24 for-sale townhomes on 6.15 acres in the downtown. The proposed density of this development is 3.9 dwelling units per acre. Rezoning is requested from R12 and O&I Office Institution to Downtown Live Work, DTLW. Variances are requested to allow up to 12 townhomes to be front-loaded, to allow encroachments into a non-perennial stream buffer and impervious setback, and to modify streetscape standards. Have the location map on the overhead. This property is 2325 Old Milton Parkway, 0 and 210 Norcross Street. This is near the southeast corner of Old Milton Parkway and Haynesbridge Road. The property, you can't really see with this cross-hatching. Actually, down here you can see. So the property is undeveloped. It is a heavily wooded property. It's about 3.1 acres of floodplain and stream buffer that cover the 6.15 acre property. The comprehensive land use plan designation of this property is mixed use live work, which allows the proposed zoning and use. As I mentioned, there are a few variances to modify downtown overlay site regulations as well as general UDC regulations. As you can see from the map on the overhead, this property does have a very unusual shape. It's situated between commercial properties. There's significant topography on this property. There are two streams on the property, a perennial stream as well as a non-perennial stream. I'll take you to the site plan. So there's a perennial stream that runs approximately in this location that has buffers that encroach on this property. And then there's also a non-perennial stream. So that's the stream with the smaller buffers, the 75-foot buffers that runs kind of north-south through the property. And then this cross-hatched area throughout the property that you can kind of see in this general area, that's floodplain. A lot of impacts to this property. The applicant is requesting to allow for some stream, buffer, and impervious setback encroachments. It's approximately 0.25 acres. They do propose setting aside an equivalent amount of buffer and impervious setback on the property, and I would like to show you what that looks like as proposed by the applicant. So this document is part of the applicant's application. They show the impacts from the construction of townhomes on this property to the impervious setback. So that's the outer 25 feet of the non-perennial stream. And then also the impacts to the 50-foot undisturbed buffer, which is the next, which is the buffer right inside that impervious setback. That totals about 11,000 square feet, a little over 11,000 square feet of encroachments. And what they show here in red is meant to be the equivalent amount of area for buffers. We have a condition that relates to the proposed mitigation for the stream buffer encroachments, and we do indicate in that condition that this area, this set-aside area for additional equivalent amount of buffer area should be outside of floodplain. So you can see at this area, it's actually overlapping the floodplain, so they'll need to find another area. There's another area here that's not already buffers, that could potentially be an area that they could set aside as additional buffer to offset. Of course, we looked at the densities. The density of 3.9 is much lower than any densities that have been approved in the downtown. There are just a couple exceptions. There's one exception along the Way Hill development along Cumming Street that had a slightly lower density, but most densities that have been approved in this particular area under this zoning district, downtown live work, and along Old Milton Parkway have been closer to 7-8 units per acre. And we'll go back to the site plan. Utilize the applicant's color site plan to go over the site plan. As I mentioned before, 24 for-sale townhomes. These townhomes are front-loaded, so these are the ones with the variance. So half the townhomes are front-loaded. The other half of the townhomes are rear-loaded townhomes. So even units 9 through 12 front on an open space, so those are considered rear-loaded at this location. They have the sidewalk in the front to indicate that this is the front of those units. As you can see from the site plan, access is off of Old Milton Parkway. The variance requests to modify the streetscape standards. As you can tell, there's a sidewalk only on one side of the street here. There's no sidewalk on this side of the street currently, as shown on the site plan. Quickly just go back to this site plan. This site plan does show a 10-foot building setback along Old Milton Parkway. The downtown live work zoning district does allow for a minimum 10-foot setback. However, we have placed conditions on most developments along Old Milton Parkway to have the 20-foot setback with the 20-foot landscape strip. The only exception to that is the Chelsea Walk development that is a couple parcels over from this along Old Milton Parkway. They actually touch back here on the lower end of the property. Chelsea Walk was approved with a 15-foot setback on Old Milton Parkway with a 15-foot landscape strip. Now, Chelsea Walk was one of the first to be rezoned under the downtown live work along Old Milton Parkway. All other developments that have been rezoned along Old Milton Parkway in this area have the 20-foot setback with the 20-foot landscape strip. The rear-loaded units, so these units here, go back to color. These units here, the rear-loaded are 20 feet wide. The front-loaded are 24 feet wide townhomes. The applicant does show a 20-foot planted buffer along this property line. There's an existing plastic surgery office building at this location here. So this was offered by the applicant. In our code, if we were anywhere else in the city, except for the downtown, we would require the for sale development to be responsible for the 50-foot undisturbed buffer. Remember, we require buffers between residential and non-residential. Typically, the buffer is going to be on the non-residential side of the property. We did change the code in the general UDC so that if a property rezones for sale and they're adjacent to commercial, that they have to provide the buffer. We did not change that code for buffers in the downtown. So they do not have to request a buffer variance for this side or for this side where they abut non-residential. So buffer is not required there only because the property is in the downtown. But they are showing a 20-foot planted buffer here, and we do have some conditions for a row of evergreen shrubs to buffer them from the adjacent daycare. Each of the townhomes has the code-compliant 2 side-by-side parking spaces within the garage. They also have the code-compliant driveway, 18-foot long driveway with 2 additional spaces. Code would require a total of, downtown code would require a total of 60 spaces, so 2.5 spaces per unit, 2 spaces per unit with a half space addition for guest parking. That again calculates out to 60 parking spaces. There are 98 parking spaces on the site, 96 of which will be in garages and driveways, and 2 additional guest parking spaces at the end of this street near the mail kiosk. The applicant identified on the site plan 1.35 acres of open space. That's 22% open space. A total of 20% open space is required in this zoning district, 10% amenity and 10% civic. There are 2 pocket parks that are identified on the site plan. There's pocket park identified in this location as well as here near this stormwater pond. They also propose some bioretention area, and I've been told by the applicant that it's both a pocket park, a bioretention, as well as a stormwater management facility. So all 3 of those things will be occurring in this location. The applicant indicated on the site plan that the civic space would be addressed with a creekside greenway. That's not particularly called out on the site plan. However, we did believe that there was sufficient area for them to meet the minimum requirement for civic space. So even though they're not depicting a trail or something within the creekside greenway, we do believe that they can meet that requirement for open space. There are 24 specimen trees and trees of quality that are called out in the applicant's arborist assessment. And of those 24 trees, they're only requesting to remove 6 of those. And then, remember I mentioned that there's 3.1 acres of stream buffer and floodplain on the property. All the trees in those areas will remain as well. So there's quite a bit of tree save that will occur on this property. And then, as I mentioned, the stormwater pond is in this location, and there's a bioretention area proposed near that. The applicant proposes 3-story townhomes. The style is Tudor eclectic style, which is an approved style in the downtown. The elevations, which I have on the overhead, this is a rear-loaded example of a rear-loaded product here. The elevations show a combination of brick with stone, board and batten, and siding accents. Units will range in size from 2,100 square feet to 2,600 square feet, and these will be 2 to 4 bedroom townhomes. We did show this to the city's downtown consultant, and he agreed that these the renderings complied with the downtown code. This is the front-loaded product, so you can see the garages on the front. course, when we looked at this application, we looked at the established review criteria for rezoning and variance. We do think that the zoning proposal is consistent with the vision of the downtown master plan as well as the future land use designation of the property. The proposed density is well below densities that have been approved in the downtown. And then we do recommend, if approved, we would like to see that building setback and landscape strip, the 20-foot that we have previously approved along Old Milton Parkway. And as I mentioned, I do mention in the staff report, and there was, one of these is incorrect. I did say that it is consistent with the setbacks and landscape strips at the Foundry, Chelsea Walk, Wellstar, Northside Hospital, and 1 Alpharetta City office buildings. All of those have 20-foot building setbacks and landscape strips except for Chelsea Walk. Chelsea Walk is actually 15. We also, as it relates to the variance request, we believe that there are exceptional conditions on this property due to its unusual shape, topography, and presence of stream and floodplains. As I mentioned, 3.1 acres of the property is unbuildable due to the presence of stream and floodplains. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report. They indicated they had not received any comments. Staff received some correspondence from residents in the area with concerns over flooding, habitat destruction, stream buffer impacts, proximity of the detention pond to Chelsea Walk, and guest parking. This item was shown to the public at the August 10th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were similar concerns listed on the sign-in sheet over sufficient guest parking, stream buffer encroachments, and proximity of the detention pond to Chelsea Walk. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's requests, conditioned on 18 conditions, and I'll go through those. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition that ties it to the site plan prepared by PEC dated 4/19/22. There is an additional sentence that is added to the end of condition 1, and I'll read that. That states, any development proposed on the property fronting Haynesbridge Road shall require site plan approval from City Council. So I know that there's been a few questions. About the portion of the property along Haynesbridge Road. There's no development proposed here currently by the applicant. So we added that sentence to condition number 1 so that if future development was proposed here, that's not just done administratively, that it has to come back to council for approval. Condition 2 ties the architecture and materials on the elevations renderings that I showed to you, ties it to those renderings. Also states DRB approval. Townhome shall have 4-sided architecture, materials, and details. Townhome side elevation facing Old Milton Parkway shall have a porch or other significant projection to give the appearance of a front elevation as approved by DRB. So that's specifically talking about this side elevation facing Old Milton Parkway. Condition 3 addresses the density. Condition 4 allows courtyards to encroach into landscape strips, contingent on meeting the minimum landscape material requirements as approved by staff. Condition 5 is the streetscape requirements for Old Milton Parkway, a 4-foot planter planted with street trees. Of course, that's subject to GDOT approval. This is a GDOT right-of-way, so they do have to approve those trees, and they typically don't like trees in their planters. Minimum 8-foot sidewalk and decorative pedestrian lighting with final approval by staff. Condition 6, streets, alleys, and sidewalks internal to the site shall be developed as depicted on the site plan prepared by PEC dated 4/19/22 with final approval by staff. Decorative pedestrian lighting shall be required throughout the development. Internal streets and alleys shall be private and maintained by the HOA. Condition 7, minimum 10-foot landscape strip shall be required along both sides of internal street, not including alleys. So this is the only alley here. So that would be the 10-foot landscape strips are along the street here. We do have the caveat in the second sentence of condition 7 due to the issues that we're having with Fulton County right now with regard to unencumbered easements for water lines. We do have that sentence in there to address that condition. Condition 8, minimum 20-foot landscape strip, building setback shall be provided along Old Milton Parkway. Of course, the landscape strip shall be a shade trees, continuation of what's been planted and designed in the downtown. Condition 9 addresses the 20-foot planted buffer along the east side of the property, so tying it to what's shown on that site plan. And then the second sentence of condition 9 asks for a double row of evergreen and hardwood trees and shrubs to be planted along the west property line in this location here. 10, project entrance shall include a decorative paver apron, landscaping, decorative low wall, and/or fencing with columns as approved by staff. 11, open space shall be developed substantially similar to the site plan prepared by PEC, dated 4/19/22 is approved by staff. Open space shall be developed with a park-like setting with decorative landscape, hardscape, and seating. Landscape shall include plant selections promoting the historic district. 12, creeping vines shall be planted to cover retaining or low walls as approved by staff. Condition 13 is the tree condition. And since they made their request based on the trees that they were removing, we identified the specific trees that could be removed, no other trees other than these though. Condition 14, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative as approved by staff. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 15, HVAC and similar equipment shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. 16, garbage pickup shall be from within the development. 17, no more than 10% of the residential unit shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declarations and covenants. And condition number 18 is the stream buffer impact mitigation condition. This is very standard condition with the A, B, C, and D options. So the idea here is to give flexibility for staff to work with the applicant on an appropriate mitigation plan during the land disturbance permit process. And that concludes the report. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to make an observation very quickly before we ask questions, and the comment is regarding the eloquence of our staff in presenting an application like this. It's not an easy job to be so thorough and so detailed and eloquent in your presentation. So I appreciate the way you and Kathy and everybody else presents. That's much appreciated. Are there any questions for Michael?
Michael, I just got a couple of questions real fast. Mm-hmm. One, just from a technical point of view, you didn't put 24 townhomes into all the conditions. You have a discussion. Was there just I know you limited it to 3.9 units per acre, but you didn't define 24 in the conditions. I was just wondering, was that just?
We typically base it on the density, and that will get you back to the 24. It's also limited to the site plan too, which show the 24 there. So that's why we didn't specifically call that out.
I didn't know. And then going back to the square piece on Haynes Bridge, do you know what that acreage is? Because the idea kind of affects density at the end of the day. It's kind of one of those. You look at the 24 and it does have a lot of circumstances. So I'm not saying that I understand there's a lot of hardship on the property, but it just looks like someone's going to come back and create commercial on that, right? And then all of a sudden, if you peel out an acre and a half out of your 6 point, you come down like 4.5, and then you're up to 9, 10 units per acre, right? I mean, and you probably could still handle it here. I'm not saying, but it's just how we're stating it, right, in the right way. Do you know what that acreage is right there, or any idea what that square is?
It appears to me that it's about an acre. I think it's probably a better question for the applicant. They probably can get you that information a little bit quicker than I can. But when we're done with question, I'll try to measure it out if I can as well. Yeah.
I have a follow-up based on the question the Vice Chair just asked. How is the density calculated in this particular case? Because there are two I would say, parcels or areas that are separated with what looks like an easement, but it's probably not. Is it based on the total area or just within the right side of the?
It's based on the overall 6.15 acre property, so it does include this area. Yes.
So that's a little bit now misleading. Well, I had to use the word misleading, but there might be development coming on this parcel in the future, which may increase the density.
Yep.
Because I was comparing this with the other developments in this area. It is like the third lowest, and that's why I thought maybe you're not. It's just based on the total area of the property, just so the commissioners can note that. Mm-hmm. All right. Any further questions?
Question on the stream and the setbacks, so the buffer setbacks. I didn't see anything in the report, and so it must not apply, but part one is any of that stream supposed to be piped, or is it they just want to encroach closer to the stream?
None of the stream will be piped as a result of the encroachment that they're requesting. So all it means, Commissioner Perkins, is that in this area here, for example, so they call out the areas where they encroach. So this outer 25 feet is what's referred to as the 75-foot impervious setback, and then the 50-foot buffer is the next lighter blue area here. And they show the encroachments here just to determine the total amount of encroachment in those areas. But basically all that happens is that these buffers get less in these areas, so they just go down to the point of where they stop the encroachment, and they'll find other areas to make up those buffers on this property.
One of the other things, the neighbors had indicated in one of their letters that there's some flooding already. Has that been brought to the city's attention? Has that been discussed at all?
There was, I mean,
it was in a letter.
yeah. So other than, what we received from the correspondence that we received in an email letter, or, things that were stated at community zoning information meeting, I don't have any knowledge of any particular flooding going on in that area, and it was not brought up by our stormwater engineer as part of her review.
I just had one follow-up question, Michael. So in this plan, I understand that, that left parcel on Haynesbridge, but there's no access being granted up through there for this development? I mean, we're not basically touching that whole side. There's no road improvement on that side. It's completely left alone.
This is completely left alone over here. They're not proposing access here, and they're not bringing, there's nothing that's proposing access, whether vehicular or pedestrian at this time through this area.
And is that a normal condition where you added that sentence on number 1? I haven't seen that before.
We have, so I have found some old zoning conditions that will include that, and it'll require, there may be some undeveloped land on a particular property. Does that happen on the regular, where we have developments where there's portions of the property that are left undeveloped? Usually we see the full build out on a site plan like that, but there are some instances where we've had that, and the condition will specify that new site plans would have to go to council. I also have precedent within our master plans. There are master plans that require that site plans, where there wasn't a site plan at the time the master plan was approved, it requires that the site plan be brought back to council for approval.
And so that would skip the planning commissioner process and just go straight to city council?
It does, technically. Now, we could certainly make a change to that to say planning commission and council. I don't see a particular issue with changing number 1 if we wanted to do that. And that was just kind of an oversight on my part. I was just kind of going back to those master plans where it said just go to council.
Yeah, I think it concerns me because it does significantly change the density, and that would be something that I would definitely be interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, you could add, this could be more townhomes. It could be under DTLW. You're allowed residential and office, basically. So it could be, there's residential uses, detached, townhome, condo that's allowed under that zoning district,
Could be a lot of things.
office. Now, retail uses, there are very light retail uses where you can seek a conditional use in downtown live work, but those do require a conditional use for any kind of retail use restaurant.
I have to say I'm struggling with the, when I'm looking at the plan, I'm taking the entire plan into consideration. And obviously, it's not a large master plan, it's a residential redevelopment, but having that hanging out there as a potential development is, I'm trying to reconcile how that, because I don't recall ever having that type of a circumstance in my experience. And I think that I like what I see in the current plan, and a lot of it is because of the density that it represents in the downtown area. But if that entire acre were to go away and not be factored in here, it would change, it would have an impact probably on my overall decision here. So I'm just talking about this. It's just a very unusual, for me anyway, it's unusual, but I do have a few other questions, Michael, to ask you about. If you, the open space condition number 11 and the civic space, can you show us on this site plan, the color site plan, where the Creekside Greenway civic space is planned to be?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
So it's probably a better question for the applicant. So I think what this board as well as council is used to seeing is we usually have a site plan that will have, areas of the property in different colors, one representing amenity space, the
Right.
other representing civic space, and then they'll show the improvement, how those areas are going to be approved. May just put a label that says pocket park, or they might actually show a trail system going along a stream or something like that. That is not on the applicant's plan. I do think that I did send them a question about that, and I do think that they are ready to respond to that question this evening.
And so I would imagine that in their response, we would probably want to add some specifics to the condition, because we're typically used to seeing, what type of trail, what the material of the trail and the width and so forth. So, all right, we can.
Yeah, you may want to consider
Making-
a little addition
right.
to condition 11 about that, yes.
My other question is regarding the detention pond area. We received a number of letters, and I think one of the letters that we received was from a resident in Chelsea Walk. If I remember correctly, they are in perhaps the building line that will be closest to the detention pond. I see that there's greenery, but I don't see any details in the application about what type of screening is expected to happen between the Chelsea Walk residential development and the pond. Do you have any specifics concerning that?
Yeah, so that's not addressed in the conditions because it's a code requirement. So we have a code requirement for a double row of evergreen trees around a detention pond. So that would be the requirement here. So there is going to be, you'll have around the pond, you'll have a 10-foot access easement so that the pond access can be gained to the pond. But outside of that will be the double row of evergreen trees and shrubs around the pond.
Around the entire pond?
That would be
Okay.
in this area as well.
Okay.
So it's to screen it from adjacent properties. So, in this area here, the fact that they're doing a bioretention area and pocket park, that they may not need to screen in this location right here because that may connect with their pocket park. They may want to make that an amenity. But
Right.
definitely, as it relates to the adjacent properties, it would have to be screened in this area.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
This might be premature before the applicant presents in the public meeting, but I think the second sentence or the last sentence of number 1 should be modified to reflect that, and I'll just read what I had wrote. New proposed development within the undeveloped area shall require approval by the city. Approval by the city means it has to go through the public process, come before the planning commission, because the planning commission does not approve, recommends, unless I get better wording from Michael. But
Would you accept maybe putting public hearing in front of approval, public hearing approval from the city?
if it means the same thing, approval by the city or
just want-
council, that's fine.
Okay. I didn't want anyone to misconstrue it as approval by the city as in city staff, because we do think that this should go back through a public hearing process.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
Agreed.
And is that
Alright.
understood that it's a planning commission and city council? Because there's public
Yes.
hearings that don't go to planning commission.
There are public hearings that don't have to go back to planning commission. You may want to think about specifying that in the condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a recommendation to the board for when we get to that point. Do we have any other
I
questions?
do. I just have a quick question on, did I hear you say there were or were not sidewalks in this site plan?
So there are sidewalks along the frontage of the property. In fact, I believe the applicant is willing to extend missing sidewalk further to the east in exchange for impact fee credits. That's just mentioning that. But they do have sidewalks on one side of the street through the development here. There's also some sidewalks in this area here for these units.
Okay. And then as far as additional parking spaces, so the only additional parking spaces other than the driveways are the 2 by the mailbox,
That is correct.
and 1 is a handicap. Is that correct?
That's what they showed.
Yeah.
It is.
So really, for most people, it's going to be 1. Okay. I'll talk to the applicant.
One last question. When looking at that, this would have to meet code, but if a fire truck came down the street, of course they could come down the street, would they be able to turn around in that little area? Is that going to be big enough for that?
Yeah, so this was reviewed by the fire marshal, and they do have a compliant turnaround in this location here. So that's what this is right here.
If no one's parking there.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dina Svetlik. It's DeanaSwetlik. I'm with Fisher Homes, representing the home building side of the development, and you've also been hearing the term grand communities. That is the land development side, so I just wanted to give you that. The address is 3940 Olympic Boulevard, Suite 400, Erlanger, Kentucky, 41018. So I am the Director of Urban Infill. I sit, as you can tell, within Fisher Homes' corporate office, and I wanted to start out with a little bit of overview of Fisher Homes and grand communities and what we've been doing throughout the history of the community. So with that, I will jump in. If we could have the next slide, please. So Fisher Homes is a privately held company based in the Cincinnati metropolitan area, founded in 1980 by Henry and Elaine Fisher. with about 33,000 new homes constructed in 41 years of history. We are a top 30 by volume U.S. home builder and the 15th largest private home builder. And we pay particular attention to neighborhood design and architectural execution. A little bit about the giving back within the company. One of the biggest organizations that the company is involved with is St. Jude's Children's Research. And throughout the history of the company, over $20 million has been raised through building 19 homes in fundraising for St. Jude's. And just this current year that we are in, we've built 3 homes in 2022, raising about $3.5 million for St. Jude's, and those homes were built in Cincinnati, Louisville, and St. Louis. And then 2 of the other items that were contributed more in the local level, the metro level in Cincinnati, is providing a nursing suite at the baseball field and a family care center at the amusement park in Cincinnati. Next, please. So there are 8 divisions within the company. Northern Kentucky is the home base, and that's where I sit. We have, obviously, our office here in Atlanta, in Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, Indianapolis, Louisville, and St. Louis. So when we first started looking at this site and looking at the Alpharetta area and driving around and getting a sense of the different developments and infill developments that have been occurring in the transformation of the community, really got interested in this becoming a unique hamlet within the downtown area of the community. We noticed that there are several different smaller niche developments that have come into the community. You know, as we know, infill development is very incremental, and it's literally kind of threading the needle to get something to work and work within the community's regulations and desires, the land use plan and the future desire for the community. So what we are proposing here is a cluster development. So we are really trying to maintain a good portion of this land in its natural state. And I know one of the questions was about the intermittent stream. And the reason that we're asking for the reduction is we did not want to have a bigger impact and actually pipe that intermittent stream. We wanted to keep it in its natural state, and hence the ask for the reduction in buffer instead of a larger ask to actually go in and pipe that intermittent stream. The name that we've chosen for the community is The Post, and in doing some of the research, we understood that Alpharetta is one of the historic trading posts across our country, and so we thought that would be an appropriate name of the community. And as Michael had mentioned, we are proposing 24 market rate fee simple, meaning everybody owns not only their unit, but they own the land underneath it, so these would not be condominiums. Fee simple for sale townhomes. And this site, as you well know, is walking distance of where we are tonight, really the true civic center, the civic heart of the community of Alpharetta. And it is also very close to the Alpha Loop trail system that is being developed. And as Michael also referenced, we would like to assist in enhancing that connection along Old Milton and extend that sidewalk from not only across the front of our property, but also over to the Chelsea Park development. And so I'm going to go into, I know there's often a lot of questions about the architecture and the units themselves. I'm going to go into a little bit more of that detail, and then I will turn it over to Kenneth Wood with PEC to continue. So some of the key components of what is called our Midtown Collection. Again, I mentioned these are fee simple townhomes. These are not condominiums. This is really about lifestyle living, right? Everybody that is choosing to live within walking distance of where we are this evening is choosing that for the very reason, all of the energy that occurs in this area. And I was really, when we were leaving the CZIM meeting a few weeks ago, it was really fabulous to see all of the activity happening outside the doors here in terms of folks walking and enjoying a meal out in the evening, going to the library for the book exchange. It was looking for a parking space, right? Healthy parking battles. So those are exactly the types of environments that we like to be a part of and develop in. So part of that lifestyle living is the HOA, so there will be HOA, so it's low maintenance for the homeowners. HOA will maintain most of the exterior of the buildings themselves as well as the site. This product is really designed with discerning finishes, so they're higher end finishes, granite countertops, 42-inch cabinets, and there are plenty of options for customization as well for buyers that really like to make their own choices. And it's really about lock and leave, right? I mean, lock your townhome and feel comfortable going away for the weekend, going on that trip and not having to maintain a large lot or a large outside area of your home. And then back to the customization. So there are, the base offering here is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. But I think Michael also mentioned you can go up to 4 bedrooms. There are bedroom-bathroom combinations to do really up to 3 kind of master suites if you wish to do that. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You can do a loft up at that retreat level, which is the highest level. There are also options at the gathering level, which is the middle level of a townhome. Buyers can choose whether they want the kitchen in the center or the kitchen in the rear, et cetera. And then there are also options for buyers for finishes. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail. The Tustin, which is our rear entry townhome, the primary building footprint of those are 20 feet wide by 44 and 46 feet at the ground level. Those have a 2-foot undulation in the front, so we're getting more articulation within the architecture at the ground level. We have a 2-car attached garage with alley access. These have 9-foot ceiling heights, 8-foot doors at that ground level in the first, or the mid-level of the townhomes. I mentioned the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath base, and I've walked through some of the higher-end finishes that we offer within this particular collection. And then the outdoor living here is not only some of the natural area we're trying to conserve on the site, but these have a rear deck off of the main living level, and that is for this particular, the alley loaded, it's 6 feet deep by about 18 feet wide. And then some of the images here is the front elevation that's been proposed and some of the interior images of the collection line. Next, please. And then the Brookline is the front-loaded townhome. That one is 24 feet wide, needs to be a little bit wider, so we're getting both the garage access and the front door coming off of the street in the front. This one has outdoor living again via a deck at the primary living level, and that deck for this one is 10 feet deep and about 20 to 22 feet wide, so it's a larger deck. And then depending on the topography of the site, if it's a flatter condition, they're also getting sort of a bonus outdoor living space at the ground level off the rear. So the flex space on the lower level, which can be the TV room, a home office, the workout room, could be another guest suite, that has a door out the back as well. So it's a little bit larger square footages. So again, the square footages, the Brookline here is the 2,400 to 2,500 square feet, and the Tustin is 2,100 to 2,300 square feet. And with that, I will turn it over to Ken. Thank you.
Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. And so I think I can go over a lot of the different questions that I heard kind of as I run through the presentation. And so the first thing to notice, you know, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up, beside the urban contextual that it's in, is the shape. You know, I've worked on a lot of projects in the city of Alpharetta over the years, and this one has definitely one of the funkiest shapes. And so when we took it on, it was a challenge to figure out what is the best use for it. I've seen it over the years, and it has a lot of topo that I'm going to walk you guys through about how it falls from the street and why this proposal has been the best suited. I've seen a lot of different proposals, and they all didn't work with the amount of dirt, walls, everything else. And this one can actually work with the grade and is best suited as we go through. Can you take it to the next one? So this is the existing zoning. As you said, the dog leg kind of on the left, that's the O&I piece that sits there today. And then it does connect. It's about a 40, 50-foot wide strip that connects between the properties. And it's in the stream buffer, and then it goes out of it and then back in as it goes into the R12 from there. You can swing over to the other one. This shows the future land use, why we believe in what we're looking at, because within the context of everything, just like the residential next door, we have the We have the elementary school that's next door with the daycare. We also have the office, and we love the contextual of that with the residential between it. If you can go to the next one. So what I want to talk about is the constraints, and this is how we kind of started developing the site and how it worked out. And this really shows you all the way from that left side. That left side is really about 0.9 acres that we were talking about, where it is on that left, that forms that box. And then there's a stream that starts, and so there's a buffer that's over there on that left side too. And that's the larger stream that runs on the bottom. And then there's a above basically usable strip of land within the middle, and then also in the center as well. And then you have the basically the normal stream, and that stream was created, like I said, over the years. And seeing the property, that stream, there is an existing pipe that catches water from Old Milton. And over time, it is collected more and more, and it eventually carved a spring head and trickles down through there and discharges back down into the perennial stream. And so that stream that runs through the bulk of the property that we're looking to improve, that I'll walk you guys through, that is a very intermittent stream, and sometimes it's very, very low flow running through there. If you can run it to the next one. This shows you guys more of the context of what I was talking about with the existing trees. And we're saving so many of the trees just by the plan of the design and also the way the site set out. So just so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about within the stream also is that it's really that 75 and 50 within a portion of it. We're never getting inside the state buffer, and we're never touching the stream except for the handwork I will walk you guys through as we talk about that into. The other reason we wanted to show this is when you're looking at the academy, my first academy, the daycare next door, they are constructed within the stream. And so you know, what was next door, most likely when that was constructed, that pipe, it probably wasn't, you know, it probably wasn't a stream at that time. And so since then now, that daycare is actually within the stream buffer as well, similar to kind of what we're facing on our site. If you're looking at it, these are the variances that we talked about, and it was really that stream buffer variance that we looked at because it is so constrained. And so when you look at the definition of variance, size, shape, topography, special circumstances, this one probably has all of them that I've ever seen, you know, in doing all over the Southeast, because it has just so much to it, and how we can make it work but still give back equal or more from what it has today. Then also the 5-foot and the 4-foot planter strip, and then the variances for some of them to be front-loaded. And I'll walk you guys through exactly on the plan about why it makes sense for those to be front-loaded. Just like a lot of the projects I've done in the city, there's just some places where front-loaded are the best place for those. If you can go to the next one. Here's the site plan with the site data chart. As we said, we are that just above the 3 units per acre for this. Looking at that left side, so I'll focus on the left side because I know there was a lot of questions on the Haynes Bridge side, and then I'll kind of move over from that. And so our proposal that we have in front of you guys does not include anything for that area. And so the reason it doesn't include anything for that is if you look at it, if you drive out there today and see the bus stop, there's a guardrail all the way down through there because there's about a 14-foot drop right off the road. And so in order to develop a commercial or develop something for there, and really all you can fit is 4 townhomes because we had looked at this, is how do you deal with the grade? How do you deal with bringing in the amount of dirt it would take to fill up 14 or 15 feet to street level? And so it's substantial. So I wanted to make sure everybody saw this exhibit because it sits so far down in a hole, and it also has good specimens trees in the stream buffer that it's a very difficult site, and that's the reason we're not proposing anything tonight. And so if that helps you with what the future of that is, it's a very difficult site to do stormwater, be able to have something that can enter. There's also a driveway if you look on the site plan that we have. And I can't remember, do we ever have a pointer that would, like, can you see my, okay, you can't see. I was trying the touch system. Yeah. on the pointer just above this, you'll see that driveway coming in. And so that really limits because you have the driveway for the residential to the south, and then you have that little parcel, and then you have another driveway. And so between you guys and transportation, there's not much area that you can actually put a driveway. So just wanted to go over why we're not proposing anything on that and why the constraints are what they are. As you move over, you guys will start seeing all the areas that are in between the stream buffer. And we got some exhibits we're going to talk about. That's where we're talking about the civic area. That's also the area where we're talking about giving back the buffers for that. Because what we really feel like is that our civic area, and the way we want to do this in context, is it's more of a respite for an urban core. So what does that mean? That means that everything around here is urban, walkable, have the buildings, and that's the reason that people want to live here. But there's also some places like the Alpha Trail that take you away from that and get you into the woods, and we feel like we have an opportunity to build a trail that would come across the creek and be able to go in that area and have like a nice little, whether it's a sitting area or some type of fire pit or something that would be more passive in nature and kind of get away from that. And so that was the idea there. The stormwater pond on the side, we did not talk about the conditions because as we went over in the code, it already has the evergreen buffer up against the east, and it's just as important for us to buffer from them as them, from us. If you're looking at the site plan in general, what we try to do is come up with the best way to enter the property. If we had it flipped, then the GDOT, the access would be too close to the academy, and so the location that we had it in was best suited for the site. And when we talked into the transportation department at GDOT, this was the best location for it as well. And that's the reason why when you enter into the property, it didn't make sense to take away the 20-foot buffer that we have on that right side and put in an alley just to have it rear loaded. And so we felt like we could also make larger homes on that left side, but it also gave the ability to come in and have more green space up against the office that sits there. When you're going on the left, that's our rear loaded homes. The ones, when you look at number 5, 6, 7, and 8, those face a little courtyard over to the side of the next ones, and then the next ones face a courtyard in the front. And we do have sidewalks on both sides, the side left of the road, as well as going down to the front of the road. And that brings you down to right in front of the fire turnaround. There's an area there we had slated for some type of a fire pit or a little gathering area. It's bigger than it appears, but you can kind of see from the plan that what we did is we did the best we could to be very efficient, pull everything up as close to the road and leave as much of that stream as we could alone. But we had to get at least some point to be able to bring a road down, get the fire turnaround, and that's how we kind of came up with the idea of what we have today in the plan. If you're looking at the slide, this brings in exactly what you guys were looking at, but brings in the contextual of the plan that Michael saw. And so this actually shows where you can kind of see the pocket parks, you can see the mail kiosk, which would sit there. It would also have the little bioretention area and the stormwater pond that sit there. And then you can kind of see where the buffers stop and where those open areas that are above, outside of the stream buffers, that can be extra area to give back for the buffer intrusion that we are coming into, but also the areas for the civic space we believe will be a little bit of an alcove. If you're looking at this, just to explain, I know when we were talking about it before, is Chelsea Walk, they built the multi-use trail because if you go just to the east of them, you'll see the Alpha Loop Trail coming down. And so this is that extension, and then it stopped. And so I didn't realize it until we walked out there that what was being described. But what we are proposing is to extend. We have the multi-use trail in front of our site. We're proposing to extend it all the way down and tie in to Chelsea Walk so you guys can complete that section and get everybody up to Haynes Bridge. And so that would be part of what we'd be proposing. Is there still a section missing?
I'm sorry, can you just back up and
Yes.
show us exactly where you're talking about that?
Sure. So if you're looking at this one, we tried to highlight it here in white on it. And so if you're looking just to the east of it, Chelsea Walk, when they built their decel lane, the multi-use trail stops right at the end of the decel lane. So we're talking about picking it up from there, bringing it across the residential house, the office parcel, and ours all the way to the academy. And so we'd be bringing it that entire, I think it's like 600 feet that we'd be bringing it all the way across. And so that's what we are proposing to be able to do as part of what we're doing with the project. If you can go over to, was that the one, right? Okay, all right, just the next one, sorry. And so the very next one, if you have it, kind of shows a depiction. The architecture that she shows kind of shows the best depiction. This kind of shows looking down the street with the sidewalk on the side, being able to plant the trees, and how it makes the most sense for the front loaded to be kind of on that left side. And if you can go to the next one. And so wanted to get into, on the last few slides, just kind of how we're dealing with the stream buffer and some of the areas. If you look at green space on the site, green space, not going off of what's in a buffer, what's not, the site is actually 71.5% green, which is the most of a site I've ever worked on. And so that includes all the area going from left all the way to right, including all the little pocket parks we have and the landscape that we have to the office. The next one we have, these are the specimens, and so the circles in red, those are the specimens we are impacting, and then all the little blotches, as my landscape architects call them, those are all the other existing specimens and good trees as defined by David in the ordinance that would be left alone in part of our proposal. If you can go to the next one. And so this is really the one that kind of shores up, and we wanted to do even a better description of the one that we had given Michael to be able to frame this. And so we're trying to show multiple different colors of where we can add stream buffer back, where we can have usable area that is stream buffer back. We also have the area in the middle of that skinny strip that we can add as well. But that's the compensation that we're looking at and the area that we are getting into the stream buffer. And as we said, we're not going into the state buffer. We are not going in the state buffer at all. We're not piping anything at all. And then on the next slide, I'll show you guys what we're doing in exchange. And so we have in-house arborists and in-house environmental services. And so I had them look at this and go walk the site and look at the current conditions and the amount of privet and invasives that are in there and the stream cleanup that's an issue because, like I said, it's catching the water off of Old Milton and across and then bringing it down in the stream. And so the right-hand side is what we're looking at, is doing some bank reinforcement, live stakes, basically cleaning up that stream bed, removing the invasive species, and only coming back with something that would be native. And so that's in exchange for us getting in there. We want to make sure that us getting in there, it's actually going to be better because we're trying to use that space and make it part of the community that we're looking at. And then this goes back to the front townhomes that we had, looking at some of the different ones that we had. And it's got a couple more slides if you go through. And then I want to go back. Can you go through the next one? This shows kind of, as we talked about the post, this was kind of the column, kind of the benchmark that we talked about, really trying to tie that architecture in to the colors and the stone from the front. And if you can go back to one of the ones so it shows the overall plan, the rendering or any of them. So there were some questions about the drainage. Chelsea Walk and the office actually sit above us. And so it all drains toward us. And so there is no drainage draining off of us onto anything. And everything comes down to the south to the perennial stream. And so I know there are some questions about how the drainage moves through there. And those are definitely not a problem because it drains all on us and everything drains basically to the southwest. And then lastly, there was a couple of, I heard some different calculations. The area on the left, we're not proposing, this is our application, like I told you, the constraints are severe, but if you took the 0.9 away, you still wouldn't be above 4.5, 4.6 units per acre if somebody came in there and tried to take that away, or if someone planned 4 townhomes that you fit in there, it would still be under 4. So I just, for discussion, I wrote that down when you guys were talking. This is our application. And we don't think that left side is developable for all the reasons we stated, but I wanted to make sure you guys had the numbers if you were calculating them out. And with that, I can take any questions you guys may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You both did a very good job presenting for the applicant. We appreciate the handout. We can go back and take a look at it. First question is that you, on the very second sheet or second slide, you mentioned about the work you've done with St. Jude. 20 million raised through building 19 homes. Did you build 19 homes for St. Jude or sold them and give the money to St. Jude?
So, yeah, and I'm not the expert in this department, but it's a fundraiser, so tickets are sold. So many tickets, and the price of those tickets are identified for each of the homes. And so we're basically providing a lot, and we're building the home, and based on the tickets sold and the value of the tickets sold, that money goes to St. Jude. And so then the winning ticket holder, they get a brand new home.
That's very good. I like the work St. Jude does, and to see an organization that's supporting them at that level is very admirable. So thank you. You're right in terms of if we took out the left area adjacent to Haynes Bridge, you're left with about 4.57 units per acre, at 4.6. And you mentioned that it's undevelopable, which means there is no likelihood it will ever be developed.
Yeah, if you have the black and white plan, I think it's 3 over, maybe 6. The next one. Go back just a little bit. One more.
When are we there at the topo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that one.
can kind of see the topography on the left. And so the issue at the left side, as we were going through and looking at it, is you have the stream that's there. We show the buffers. You have the specimens on the right. You have the guardrail, and then it immediately slopes. And so it sits down way, way, way below the road. That's why it's never been carved out to this day, as the downtown's been exploding and said, this is going to be a parcel, because 0.9 acres times 15 feet to get it to a commercial level is serious. And then also it doesn't connect to anything, and the access is really wonky. I don't know if you can't get full access. So it's got to be either right in only and maybe right out. But so that's the reason is we, this is our proposal, and I know there was a lot of questions about it, but that's how we analyzed it. Is it's an extremely difficult site to deal with.
Would there be any consideration by the owner to donate it as an easement with perpetual covenants never to be developed?
We're here to listen this evening, so we will listen to ideas and recommendations and take those back and take those into consideration.
Okay, well, we can make you do that. It's just a question that you may consider, because without that, we'd have to still put accommodation regarding potential future development to make sure that the city is protected. Those are the only two questions I had. Well, the price point. What is the price point for these units?
Sure. So the range in terms of sales price, by the time the typical buyer would work in the various options that I mentioned, we're looking at probably the high 7s to the high 8s.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on
Commissioner
your
Richardson.
last question or comment about potential donation of an easement. The letter of intent that was part of the application specifically states that the 4 acres are intended to continue to be in an undisturbed state. So when I was reading the application and evaluating it, I took that to mean that that parcel, that 0.9 acres, was going to continue to be undisturbed. So I guess I'm a little confused about what you're saying in the letter of intent versus some of the discussions that we've heard tonight, that it's difficult to develop. But I know in this town, difficulty doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It means it's just going to be more creative approach to it, perhaps. But so you're here to listen, which is great, but I also think that it specifically says it in the letter of intent. So I would be comfortable in adding the condition here to support what is said in the letter of intent.
Yeah, I mean, I can, just the response is the same that Ken had mentioned, that we've sat around a conference room table, we've scratching our heads, I mean, just understanding the topography, the fact that the right turn lane at that point on Haynes Bridge, turning onto Old Milton, that entire frontage of that property is actually the turn lane at that point. Mm-hmm. So we've worked through, talked through several different scenarios, and, again, to Ken's comment, we just don't see that being feasible for us to develop our townhomes there, and hence our application is as such.
Thank you.
Question on the parking spaces. Do you want to address that a little bit? Because let's say that I bought one of those and I have book club that night, and I have 6 ladies coming over for book club, but I only have I have 2 driveway parking spots, right? But I only have 1 parking spot for a guest. So where are they going to park?
So looking at it, we had thought in terms of all the downtown projects we've done, we haven't really had a major issue with having a lot of different guest spaces, especially for the 24 units. If there's like a specific, where there's a book club, I'm sure, honestly, y'all would probably pull in the fire lane, honestly, and park. But obviously, with you having 2 in the driveway, 2 in the garage, and then filling up the 1 space that's there, there would be off-site parking options and then walking there or Ubering there. But that's what we were proposing, because we had felt like with the urban infill, it was plenty of parking, but we had heard that was a question that may come up.
Well, I will share, I'm a lock and leave resident, so sold the house, moved into a townhome development, walking distance from here. Our development was built in the early 2000s, so it was before the price of land became as crazy as it is right now. So we have a lot of guest parking where I live. And we average 4.5 spaces, 2 in the garage, 2 on your driveway, and then a half guest space per unit. So, and I will tell you that you said parking battles when you talked about when you were here for the CZIM. In our development, we have parking battles for guest spaces, and it is it's a real challenge. And I appreciate what you said about looking at the other infill development and seeing what's working and what's not. My challenge with your limited guest parking is that you're sort of an island unto yourself. You don't, we have a lot of infill on Thompson Street and Canton Street, and they have access to public parking on the streets. They have access to parking decks. But here, your residents really have nowhere to go. And I see that as being a significant downside to your model. And I'm being brutally honest. Empty nesters have lots of stuff. So if they can fit 2 cars in their garage, that's unusual. Usually there's always one on the actual driveway. And then you've got the model home experience versus the living experience. And when you've got, the landscape guys coming in for an entire day, where are they going to be? You can't park on the street because the streets are so narrow. You've got maintenance people coming to your home, HVAC and painters. It's a ongoing tension, basically, in my experience. So I know you've got 2 here at the kiosk.
Yes.
And if there's any way for you to try to squeeze another few in there, I think it would be very advantageous to the development. And I'm speaking from experience, not from what I'm hearing. I'm speaking from personal experience.
And so we can get, we work on being creative on parking all the time. I think if you guys had a suggestion, of a condition where instead of the 2, you wanted to see it be, 4, I think we can
You've
figure
got the
out
flexibility
something.
there?
We can figure out how to fit in some more spaces, just looking at it, because we had heard that was a concern walking that for it.
Yeah, and if I might, so I know one of the things we explored too is, I really wanted to have on-street parking on one side of the street, right on the west side coming down, to provide some of that additional parking. Unfortunately, just given some of the requirements on the detached tree lawn or parkway, is the city's term, right, the detached sidewalk, and that width, we're up against the width between the buffer on the east and moving all the way west across the site. And then also, you're coming down in grade, and so that first row, right, by lot number 1, we probably wouldn't be able to put any parking there anyway, just because of the fact of the cars coming off and then coming downhill. And then in terms of additional stretch within, if we had the width going across from east to west, we could have some on-street potentially sort of in front of Unit 8. But that would mean sort of, potentially reducing that eastern buffer down to maybe 15 feet. I mean, we'd have to look at it in terms of how much we would need to make that work. And it would also, it might mean having an attached sidewalk internally in the community in that location. But those would be some ways that we could look at getting creative with trying to get some additional parking.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions. So I'd like to ask this explicit question. So is the applicant in agreement with all 18 conditions as presented by Mr. Woodman?
Yeah, all the staff conditions.
Okay. Let me parse that a little bit, because on condition 8, the staff is recommending a 20-foot landscape buffer and setback, but I'm pretty sure I saw on the site plan only a 10-foot setback. Did I get that right?
Yes.
So help me understand the difference.
Yeah, and you're referring to along Old Milton?
Correct.
So, right, so the lot, as we currently have it shown, is showing the 10-foot setback, but as you can see, there's additional space from the front of that lot, where we drew the lot line on this illustrative, to the actual right-of-way. So as it's drawn now, on that unit number 1, we actually are at 20 feet from the front of that unit already. And I think we're at about 18 on unit 24. So it would mean just shifting that down a little bit into our pocket park.
And I'm going to look at Michael real quick, because I just want to confirm. So what she just said relative to the 20 feet and the 24 feet, that's consistent now with condition 8 to your... Because like I said, I saw 10 feet in the site plan, and it's a big difference.
Yeah, the site plan shows a 10-foot setback is depicted along Old Milton Parkway, but the units are pushed further from that 10-foot. So I don't know exactly how much room there, but it appeared to us that they could make a slight shift of the townhomes a little bit further south and comply with the 20-foot setback and landscape strip.
Because and the reason, Commissioner, we had thought that the 10 was code and the 20 was what's been happening. And so that's why we showed the 10.
Got it.
But you can see it's pulled back.
The other question I had was around condition 18, and when Michael, in the staff presentation, showed the site plan, it showed that the area that you had set aside that was highlighted in red, kind of in the bottom right, was actually in the floodplain and wouldn't count there.
Yes.
So where is that actually proposed right now? That
If you can keep going to about 5 slides over. And so there's multiple areas to get way above the requirement. There, we showed this area that is all usable on this slide, as well as the area where it's the skinny part. We have multiple areas that's outside of the buffer that we can add even over and above what we're getting into with the buffer. And so from a staff comment standpoint, if the floodplain is something we need to stay out of, we can easily accommodate that because we have all these other areas. We didn't realize that was a comment at the time when we submitted that.
Okay. And then just a couple more. The next one is on that area of the plot of land that's adjacent to Haynesbridge Road.
Right.
I hear you on undevelopable. I hear you on 14 feet down. I like Commissioner Richards' idea about maybe conditioning that it stay undisturbed. But I'm just curious, would the applicant be interested and open in concept to dedicating that back to the city, potentially for a park or a pocket park at city cost, if approved by the city?
So, yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that is something that we will have to take back and have conversations with in terms of just where we are with our current contract and the financial obligations and so forth. So, but we will take that under consideration for sure.
Especially if it's undevelopable. I mean, if it could be a park or some kind of park. And Commissioner Reynolds and I went by there today. If we want to leave that undisturbed, it's pretty gnarly undisturbed land as far as kudzu and vines that have to be 50 years old and things like that. The one last thing, and I'm sorry to belabor it, I've heard the reference to open space and walking trails and pocket parks and all that several times, but like if I just take the pocket park, in this deck you presented, on the front page, the pocket park is kind of to the far left by Unit 13, and on the Hamlet slide, it's more over to the right, and some slides have the bio-retention area and some don't. Can you kind of just, maybe I'm slow, but just, you can use this to put a physical copy here and maybe just point out where the walking trail is planned, where the pocket park is planned. The other thing we usually get with pocket parks is the idea of the size. Is the size, give us a feel for the size of the planned pocket park. I mean, is it the size of this dais? Is it the size of this room? Is it half an acre? Is it, don't have a feel for that.
So I think let me see if I can, okay. All right, so if you're looking at it here, so we set aside that this area and this area and this area all can be essentially pocket parks. To kind of give you an idea, this unit here in terms of size is roughly 20 by 50, close, right? That. So that's roughly 1,000, right? Kind of looking at it, 1,000 square feet. So if you look at this area, this would be about 2,000 square feet, so a little bigger than this. If you're looking at this area down here, we think that that can be a combination of creating a kind of a little bio area, more of a rain garden, but also making it a park feel. And so this area down here is more like 4,000 square feet, so it's more double this as we've been looking at it. And then the area out here where we can fit a fire pit and the mail kiosk and everything, this together is roughly about 2,800, 3,000 that we've looked at in terms of square footage that it can be. Now, where we're talking about coming down, taking the sidewalk, coming around here, this area here and this area here, where we're talking about just being able to have kind of this respite where it's very well treed and it's away from the noise because it sits down below Old Milton. It's just a little bit of a different feeling area. This area here outside of the buffer alone is upwards of about 8,000 to 10,000 square feet, and the area here is almost the same coming through there, to kind of give you an idea of the areas for what those are.
And so the walking trail would kind of snake through that dog leg? And
we're thinking it comes right across. Oh my gosh, these swatches. Sorry. Yeah, so the idea would be come right across, and this would be one area, but we'd also be able to loop the pond and tie it back and then come across through here. So essentially your Civic would be through here, come and across the pond, and then be able to get back up and then have that link all the way down to Chelsea Walk.
Okay. And Michael and Kathy, I don't know, I just feel like the site plan, I mean, I love everything the gentleman just said, but as we get a week out from here, a month out from here, 3 months out from here, people are going to forget, all these 3 different areas of pocket parks and the sizes and the walking trail and where it is. And some people might forget about it altogether. And I don't know if the site plan needs to have that imprint a little tighter and more specific or what, but otherwise, I like what you said.
I mean, we'd be fine. I mean, if you guys are agreeable to have, some type of recommendation from you guys that, within the next time frame, we have to be able to show that, to present, and that we can, based on what we said.
Even if all of those were just overlaid in red here or something that makes them, you can kind of see the boundaries.
Sure,
and
I totally
if you had a legend with those square footages that you mentioned, I think that would be helpful, especially when you go to council.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get it.
Thank you.
And I think we've seen enough of these stormwater management facilities now. We know they're subject to, final studies, right? I had no idea there was another park on this. I mean, honestly. So I just think that clarity in that between the now and the next meeting, just real simple to do.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are great comments.
I had one last question about the stormwater runoff and the runoff. In the citizen community information meeting, one of their questions or concerns was the flooding. You addressed that. You said you're lower. What were you? Any of you together? These people, at the community information meeting, did they either not get that communicated to them or?
I think most likely it was mentioned that elevation-wise that we are lower. But I think just in general, when there's a plan out there and you see blue on it and it's next to you, there's a fear that it's going to come on you. It is most likely what I would, the way it usually comes out. But in terms of the topography, everything comes right down straight to the perennial stream, and so there's no way that water is going back up that side. We actually have the office that has their old school detention pond in the parking lot that comes onto us too that we got to deal with.
All right. There are no further questions. We're going to open this meeting for public comments, and then you have some time to say something before I turn it over to the board. Anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. We have one at the back. To this microphone, and please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi. My name is Michelle O'Brien. I'm a resident of the Haynes Park Townhomes and 205 Nottaway Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. So kind of just having reviewed this plan ahead of this meeting and hearing some of the comments today, a couple things I just wanted to say briefly. One, overall, I think I'm in support of the development. I think it's well thought out. I think the design of the homes match kind of the feel of the downtown historic area. And I think they've been very thoughtful in terms of what's going on with the plan, still a lot of the setbacks that doesn't really impact our community. And then I would also agree with you in terms of I would very much like to see if there was anything going forward with that parcel off Haynesbridge Road. I don't think that just goes to the council. I think it has to go to yourselves to re-review it because there's obviously a level of thoroughness that I would like to see addressed. And also I will say, just having walked past that, it's really, really steep. So appreciate everyone's time today, but I think it's a great development, and I think I'm definitely in support of it. So
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Anyone in opposition? No one in opposition. So you have anything else you'd like to add? Thank you. I'll turn this over to the board for discussion and our motion. And I'd like to start by saying, yeah, I do like the layout of the site plan and also the units themselves. You showed very nice pictures of how they would look like and the options that homeowners actually do have. I do agree with what has been mentioned by the commissioners regarding showing the locations of parks and the trail, connecting them before you go to council.
I'd also like to have them address the parking. I don't know how we want to do that, but if we want to make that a condition, or do you have a suggestion?
Yeah,
on that?
let's not say let. I think we can come up with something up here that we could all live with in your comments. Is there any particular number you would want to share with the rest of us?
I'll throw, sorry. I will, I think I'm really happy to hear that the applicant is willing to go back and look. I feel a little constrained about giving them a hard number because it really requires to relook at a lot of different things and lots of different moving parts. They've got 2 right now. I would probably feel comfortable in doubling that 4. I think it sounds reasonable to me, and I'm looking to see what kind of reaction I get on that. So I didn't get a bad reaction. So I think 4 would be a good number to work for. I mean, ideally, the more the better, in my experience.
Use
but I think
at least 4.
Minimum of 4?
Yeah.
I like that.
So I completely agree. I think it's such a difficult, it's such an unusual, like you guys said, such an unusual piece of property and how it's done and all the topography and all the streams. The crisscross down here with all the different streams, that's completely unusable. I hope it's not a hamlet. I know you kind of picked that word out, but I don't want it to be a tragedy, a Shakespeare tragedy out there. So sorry, I had to pick that out. But I think the biggest thing here is, to come back for review just on that one piece, if it ever does happen, come back to the Planning Commission and the City Council, and then to kind of add the additional parking spaces as an additional piece. Because I just think, the quality of life and all those kind of things, it needs to be added in there.
Well, I would suggest, my suggestion, I know we haven't made a motion yet, but I think that I think the fact that the letter of intent clearly states that the 4 acres are going to remain undeveloped, I think we add that as a condition. And we, between now and when they go to council, obviously, ideally, an easement, donation to the city, those are all fabulous opportunities. But I think at the very minimum, I just like to see the condition stated so that it supports what was in the letter of intent.
Trying to think through adopting that into the conditions.
It'd be number 19.
Yep.
Yeah, we'd end up with a 19 and a 20 for the guest parking too. I think I would just take the work, and staff, maybe they can give us some guidance on this, but using the language in the letter of intent, the remaining 4 acres of the site will continue in an undisturbed state. Would that be appropriate, Michael?
You could add that, just make sure that you, if you were going to do that, that you'll want to strike the last sentence in
And
condition.
condition 1, right.
Okay, and then what about 20? Karen, how are you gonna?
That can actually be a replacement sentence for the last sentence on condition 1.
So I'm not sure I'm following. You're saying the sentence that
Right.
I just articulated is not a new condition, we just add that as replacing the last sentence in
Correct.
condition 1, makes sense. So then we end up only with one new condition, which is for a minimum of 4 guest parking spaces. Okay. Do you follow?
But I do have a question for you. Does this limit us with future opportunities undisturbed?
A condition can always be brought back for approval, but so you,
Something fabulous was
if you want to change that undeveloped state, you have to come back.
And my reason for suggesting it is not that I don't expect that to stay in the final council conditions. I think we're putting it in here, and we've given direction to the applicant that, there could be some other opportunities for that space, but I don't think we can hammer it out tonight.
That would be, anything other than the development will remain undisturbed or undeveloped. That's what it's going to be.
Unless they come back.
Unless it goes before the council.
Right.
Oh,
You want to go for it? Or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll go for it. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Z-22-13/V-22-25 Grand Community /2325 Old Milton Parkway, subject to the following conditions. I will go through the conditions that we've made adjustments to. Condition number 1, strike the last sentence, any development proposed on the property fronting Haynesbridge shall require site plan approval from City Council. Strike that and replace with the remaining 4 acres of the site will continue in an undisturbed state. And then I'm adding conditions, no changes through conditions 2 through 18. And then adding condition number 19, minimum number of guest parking, minimum number of 4 guest parking spaces shall be provided on the site plan. And
Second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. It's going to be held by council on September the 26th. Sorry, 19th. Is that correct? What is September the 19th and Monday, September 26th? Okay, okay. So the second one would be the 26th, the first one is the 19th. All right. September the 19th before City Council.
Here.
Thank you. We have
Take
another.
these back and use these for council.
I'll keep mine. I'll keep mine. I think
We're
we'll
gonna
for
be-
us to keep it.
But add the parks and stuff in that, please.
I'm keeping mine. I'm not giving it back. Thank you. All right, the next item is PH-22-10, Unified Development Code, UDC text amendments, banner signs. I assume Ms. Kathy Cook is presenting.
Thank you, Chairman. The final item tonight is a discussion and consideration of a change to UDC Section 2.6, the sign code. And the Georgia Department of Transportation, of course, is conducting pretty extensive construction along Highway 9, which I know that you have seen that, which has impacted a lot of the Alpharetta Main Street businesses. And they did reach out to us asking for some kind of relief. There's been some negative economic impacts to these businesses, and a lot of it's because the monument signs had to be moved, or it's because, you know, the construction equipment is sitting in front, and you've seen kind of what's going on Main Street. So we are proposing a change to the restrictions on banners in order to allow the banners to remain. And of course, banners can be no greater in size than 24 square feet. But the proposal is that they can remain until December 1st, 2023. And we have some red line proposal. I think it's kind of hard to see, but I'll go through this. And this is a change to our banner code, allowing the director may grant an extension of the time period set forth for a restaurant or retail business when the business fronts a roadway that is under construction. In order to qualify for such an extension, a few things have to occur. The subject roadway construction must be related to a project performed by the City of Alpharetta or Georgia Department of Transportation. And the reason we wrote this, of course, is because there could be just a developer that's doing some road construction, and we wanted to make sure that this was really geared toward, you know, projects that are done by the city or GDOT, and the project must continue for 6 months. So it has to be a long, ongoing construction project. And then 3, the subject roadway construction either A, causes the removal of a monument sign, or B, as determined at the discretion of the director, disrupts the store frontage to the extent the site or business appears closed without the use of the banner. And then lastly, the change would be any extension granted under this subsection shall be limited to the duration of the subject roadway construction. Extensions granted by the director may be revoked or limited at any time due to changes in the roadway construction or disruption of the store frontage as determined at the discretion of the director. Basically, if you can clearly, you know, see the business now, the monument sign's back up, and they've moved on to another section, then the permit would be taken back for that particular retailer or restaurant. Also, it states the director may require removal or replacement of any banner placed pursuant to an extension at any time if the banner is not maintained in good condition as determined at the discretion of the director. And that's the proposal, and of course, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Well, how are the banners, like, are they on metal posts sitting in front of the, or are they hanging on the building?
It could be on the building. Probably most of them will be on the building, because what we've seen is it's been kind of difficult for the businesses because they have to move their monument sign, and then a lot of times then the equipment is right in the right-of-way at the corner. So most cases, it would probably be on the building. And during COVID, we did something like this on a temporary basis. It was about a year where we allowed businesses that were open during the pandemic to have a banner, which they usually could not have a banner, so they were allowed to keep that for almost a year. And it was in order for people to see, you know, those are the businesses that are open. So when we did that during COVID, we did it kind of as an emergency order, but since we're back to meetings and we want to do something similar that's caused by road construction, then it's something that we're putting in the actual code. And if the program doesn't work, we would be back to remove this from the code.
Kathy, it's restricted to restaurants and retail businesses.
That's right, because those are drive-by, people may not be headed to the doctor's office or their insurance office, which are usually more destination. You know where you're going, so you know it's open. So that's why we restricted it to the restaurant and the retailers. That's more of a quick decision. Oh, I'll stop in here,
Okay.
that type of thing.
So I'm thinking about what's going to happen along Webbridge Corridor, which is mainly a residential, with the exception of the animal hospital there. So she would not, or that owner would not qualify.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And one of the
So I'm going to ask you to expand on that, because I can tell you, just as a vested interest out there, it is very difficult up and down that corridor with construction. It's been a lot of rain throughout the summer. You can't see. It's confusing for anyone, any motorists going up and down that street. I think a little lenience out there to help folks, guide people appropriately. That's not just there. There's a multitude of different businesses up there. Leave it up to the business to make that application to you.
Absolutely. And I think, in the future, if the construction starts on North Point Parkway, the direction for North Point Parkway is a lane reduction. So you can imagine there's going to be a lot of construction along North Point. There'll be a lot of businesses there that would qualify. So this is aimed at long-term construction in order to help the retailers and the restaurants.
I have a couple of points. Should this include the county instead of just the city and the DOT?
Yes, that could be added. Most of the time, it's the county doesn't have any long-term road projects. Now, they may have a water line repair, of course, or sewer line, but
And the reason I say that is because we are codifying this, so this is in the code, I think, to capture everything and any possibility, the city, the county, or the Department of Transportation.
we could certainly add that.
And I would also, should we include language in terms of the placement should be approved by the director, the location of the banner?
On the building or on the street side. I was.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different because it can be either on the building or it can be actually in the ground. Just depends on what construction's happening. But you can certainly add that.
I think the
discretion of
location is, should be approved by the director. At the time when the extension is requested, they'll tell you where they're placing it. So they just don't put it anywhere.
Right, and that's fine, and we can add that to the application because there will be an application process. And it is our intent to actually go to the businesses that we believe are impacted instead of just, regular advertisement. We're going to actually go to the business that we see are kind of suffering without their signage and make sure that they have that application and that permit.
Are you sure you just want to limit it to retail and what was the other restaurant? I mean, do you want to just leave it? I don't know. It just seems like there might be a hardship on somebody, and now I don't know. I'm leaving that up to you.
I haven't heard from, the businesses that I'm hearing from are restaurant and retail. I haven't heard from other, office or doctor's offices or insurance company. And if I did, I could certainly bring it back, but that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, but we're here tonight for the approval of it, I think is the key. Is just because you haven't heard from them doesn't mean that there's not businesses out there that haven't considered this. And I would say is, once again, it is very confusing out there for people up and down that corridor. It's a mess. That banner's not going to make it look, I mean, it's.
Why don't you just leave it more open-ended?
But I would say in that,
Yeah.
though, I think the governance that you could have is as a staging and it's in improving in a way, then you're asking them to take them down early, right? It would be just, it's more of a limitation in time. Limit the time, not the business. So, as it comes across with like the sidewalks kind of coming in and the curbs, and all of a sudden the beautification starts to come into place, you can stage that as, okay, now you start taking these things down because it looks better. But when it's a mess with dirt piled up and everything everywhere, then it's just hard to see. And you're confused as you're going down the lanes. So that's just a little input of what I've seen out there.
And you could, if you wanted to do that, you know, and make that recommendation, it would just be a change, instead of restaurant or retail, just change that to commercial.
Or just say businesses.
Yeah, just
I like that
commercial
better.
business.
Don't you?
You don't want at-home businesses, so it would just be commercial business.
Would you support that? Because I think that'd be great.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Anyone else has any input? I hear some discussion to my left.
Sorry, we were just talking about on page 2, number 4 talks about the location of where the banners can go, either on the wall. I know that's not what you're proposing changes to, but the location question that I had, it is taken care of there. So my only concern is you get a strip mall with 10 places, you now have 10 banners potentially along the curb. You know, do you care so much where they're located? Or is that just, you hope it does the job and attracts the business?
Well, they're required to submit a site plan of where the banner is going, so we look at every
Okay, so that's
location.
part of that process?
Yes.
That's what I was double checking?
Yes, they have to include that
Okay. Then we're-
as
I'm
part
good.
of the permit.
And this is just a curiosity question I've been meaning to ask. The existing signs that are on, that I see on North Main for the most part, are those signs, the green, and they talk about that the businesses are open, that type of thing, is that something the city did, or did GDOT do that?
That's something that we did when we started hearing some of the concerns and the complaints, but what's happened is GDOT keeps calling us saying you need to move your sign. So they keep telling us to move the sign because the equipment's there, so in order, and they're heavy.
Yeah.
So we've been having to pay an independent company to move those when they need moved. So it hasn't been as effective as we thought, and in some places it is, but, so that's when we thought, well, what else can we do?
Yeah, this makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Anybody wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve PH-22-10 Unified Development Code text amendments - banner signs, and with the conditions changed in A and changing it for a restaurant or retail business to,
Sorry to interrupt, but we didn't have public comment.
oh, I'm sorry.
Is that what you're going to prompt me to?
Yes.
Yes.
Public comment, please.
Anyone wants
Rewind.
to comment on this? No comments. All right.
All right, here we go. I make a motion to approve PH-22-10 Unified Development Code text amendments banner signs, and we're going to change in EA, remove for a restaurant or retail business to commercial business.
Second.
The placement.
What happened to the Fulton County, weren't you
Yeah, correct. Fulton County.
So we need a friendly amendment.
It's by the city or county or the GDOT.
Somebody has to make a friendly amendment.
I'll make a friendly motion that on the general provisions under A, but under number 1, the subject roadway construction must be related to a project performed by the city, the county, or the Georgia Department of Transportation, and as follows.
Do you accept?
I accept.
I accept. Second.
All right. Any discussions? Any further discussions on the amended motion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. You're ahead of me. Any other item the board would like to discuss before I adjourn the meeting? Meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you here on, when's the next meeting? October 6th. Enjoy the rest of the summer.